Book 14. Odysseus meets Eumaeus. Odysseus left the harbour, taking the rough path into the woods and across the hills, to the place where Athene told him he would meet the swineherd, who was, of all the servants Lord Odysseus had, the one who took best care of his possessions. He found him sitting in the front part of his house, a built-up courtyard with a panoramic view, a large, fine place with cleared land all around. The swineherd built it by himself to house the pigs, property belonging to his absent master. He hadn't told his mistress, or old man Laertes. He'd made it from huge stones, with a thorn hedge on top and surrounded on the outside, with close-set stakes facing both ways, made by splitting oaks apart, to leave the dark heart of the wood. Inside the yard, to house the pigs, he'd packed 12 sties together. In each one 50 wallowing swine were penned, sows for breeding. The boars, far fewer of them, stayed outside. The feasting of the noble suitors kept their numbers low, for the swineherd always sent the finest of all fattened hogs for them to eat. 360 boars were there. 4 dogs, fierce as wild animals, always lay beside them. These the swineherd, a splendid man, had raised himself. He was trimming off a piece of coloured ox hide, shaping sandals for his feet. 3 of his fellows had gone off, herding pigs in different directions. He'd had to send a 4th man to the city with a boar to be butchered for the suitors, so they could eat meat to their heart's content. All of a sudden the dogs observed Odysseus. They howled and ran at him, barking furiously. Odysseus was smart enough to drop his staff and sit. Still, he'd have been severely mauled in his own farmyard, but the swineherd ran up fast behind them, dropping the leather in his hands. Charging through the gate and shouting at his dogs, he scattered them in a hail of stones here and there. Then he spoke out to his master. "Old man, these dogs would have ripped at you in no time, and then you would have heaped the blame on me. Well, I've got other troubles from the gods, things to grieve about. For as I stay here, raising fat pigs for other men to eat, I'm full of sorrow for my noble master, who's probably going hungry somewhere, as he wanders through the lands and cities where men speak a foreign tongue, if in fact he's still alive and looking at the sunlight. But follow me, old man, come in the hut. When you've had enough to eat and drink and your heart's satisfied, you can tell me where you're from, what troubles you've endured." With these words, the loyal swineherd went inside the hut, brought Odysseus in, and invited him to sit, after piling up some leafy twigs and over them spreading out the shaggy skin of a wild goat, the large and hairy hide which covered his own bed. Odysseus was glad to get this hospitality, so he addressed him, saying, "Stranger, may Zeus and other gods who live forever give you what you truly want. You've welcomed me with such an open heart." Then, swineherd Eumaeus, you answered him and said, "It would be wrong, stranger, for me to disrespect a guest, even if one worse off than you arrived. For all guests and beggars come from Zeus, and any gift from people like ourselves, though small, is welcome. It's the fate of slaves always to fear young masters who control them. The gods are holding up the journey home of the man who would have loved me kindly and given me possessions of my own, a home, a plot of land, a wedded wife worthy of being wooed by many suitors, the sort of things a generous master gives a servant who's toiled so hard for him, whose work the gods have helped to thrive and grow, the way the tasks I put my mind to here have prospered. If my master was at home and growing old, he would have given me so many things. But he has perished. How I wish all of Helen's relatives had died, brought to their knees since she loosed the knees of so many warriors. He went to Troy, famous for its horses, to carry out revenge for Agamemnon by fighting Trojans." After saying this, he quickly cinched a belt around his tunic, went out to the pig pens where the swine were held, picked out 2 from there, brought them in, and killed them. He singed and cut them up, then skewered them on spits. Once he'd roasted them completely, he picked them up, and without taking out the spits, carried them still hot over to Odysseus. Then he sprinkled over them white barley meal. In a bowl carved out of ivy wood, he mixed wine sweet as honey. Then he sat down opposite Odysseus, inviting him to dine. "Eat now, stranger, what a servant offers, meat from a young pig, for the suitors take the fatted hogs. Their hearts have no pity and don't ever think about God's anger. The truth is this: the blessed gods don't love men's reckless acts. No, they honour justice and men's righteousness. Even enemies with cruel intentions can invade the lands of someone else, and Zeus awards them spoils. They fill their ships and then sail off for home. And even in the hearts of men like these falls a great fear of vengeance from the gods. But these suitors here, I think, know something. They've heard a voice from one of the gods about my master's painful death. That's why they don't want to have a righteous courtship or go back to their own homes. No. Instead, without a care, they waste our property in all their insolence, sparing nothing. Every day and night Zeus sends, they kill our animals, and not just one or two, and with their arrogance they draw our wine, taking what they want and even more. My master used to be a man of substance beyond all measure. No warrior hero on the dark mainland or Ithaca itself possessed as much. 20 men combined did not have so much wealth. I'll tell you this. On the mainland he's got 12 cattle herds, as many flocks of sheep and droves of pigs, and wide-ranging herds of goats, all of these tended by foreign herdsmen, or his own, and here on the edges of this island graze wandering herds of goats, 11 in all, with loyal servants keeping watch on them. To serve the suitors, every one of them keeps driving in a creature from his flock, the fattest one which seems to him the best. That always happens each and every day. As for me, I guard and raise these pigs. I choose with care and then deliver them the finest of the boars." Eumaeus finished. Meanwhile, Odysseus eagerly devoured the meat and drank the wine in silence. He was ravenous. He was also sowing troubles for the suitors. Once he'd eaten his heart's fill and had enough, Eumaeus filled the bowl from which he drank himself and gave it to him full of wine. Odysseus took it, happy in his heart, and spoke winged words to him. "My friend, who was the man who used his wealth to purchase you? Was he powerful and rich, as you've just said? You claim he was destroyed helping Agamemnon take out his revenge. Tell me. I may know him, a man like that. Zeus and the rest of the immortal gods know if I've seen him or heard any news, for I've been travelling a lot." Then Eumaeus, a worthy man, answered him and said, "Old man, no wanderer who came with news of him could convince his wife or his dear son. Men who roam about when they need a meal have no desire to speak the truth. They lie. Whoever moves around and reaches here, this land of Ithaca, goes to my mistress with some made-up tale. She receives him well with hospitality and questions him about each detail. Then she starts to grieve, and tears fall from her eyes, as is fitting when a woman's husband has died far away. You too, old man, would make up a story quickly enough if someone offered you a cloak and tunic and some clothes to wear. But by this time swift birds and dogs have ripped the flesh from off his bones and his spirit slipped away. Or else in the sea the fish have eaten him and his bones now lie on shore somewhere, buried in deep sand. Anyway, he died out there. From now on it's the fate of all his friends to grieve, especially me. However far I travel, I'll never come across another man who'd match him as a gentle master, not even if I went back home again to where my mother and my father live, where I was born, where they reared me themselves. I don't mourn for them so much, though I yearn to see them once again with my own eyes and be in my own native land again. What grips me is a longing for Odysseus, who is gone. Even though he is not here, stranger, I speak his name with full respect. His love for me was great, and in his heart he cared. So, although he may be absent, I call him my dear master." Resourceful Lord Odysseus then answered him and said, "My friend, since you're so resolved in your denials, when you declare he'll not come home again, and your heart always clings to this belief, I won't just tell you Odysseus will be back. No, I'll take an oath on it. When he comes, when he gets back home, give me my reward for my good news. Let me have fine clothing, a cloak and tunic. Until that moment there's nothing I'll accept despite my need, for just as I despise the gates of Hades, I hate the man who in his poverty tells stories which are lies. Now let Zeus, the first of gods, this welcoming table on the hearth of excellent Odysseus, which I have reached, let them bear witness. All these things will happen the way I say. Odysseus will come here within a month. Between the waning and the rising moons, he'll get back home and take out his revenge on anyone here who has not honoured his wife and noble son." Then, swineherd Eumaeus, you answered him and said, "Old man, I won't be rewarding you for that good news. Odysseus won't be coming back. Drink up. Relax. Now, let's talk of something else. I don't want to remember all those things. The heart here in my chest gets full of grief when someone mentions my good master, so let's forget about your oath. I wish Odysseus would come home, that's what I want. So does Penelope, Laertes too, the old man, and noble Telemachus. Right now I'm always grieving for the boy, the child Odysseus had, Telemachus. The gods brought him up just like a sapling, and as a man I thought he'd be a match for his dear father, with a splendid shape and handsome. But one of the immortals warped his better judgment. Perhaps it was some human being, for he's gone on a trip to sacred Pylos to find out some news about his father. Now noble suitors lie in wait for him as he comes home, and so the race of noble Archesius will die without a name in Ithaca. But let's just let him be. They may get him, or he may escape, if the son of Cronos holds out his hand to guard him. But come now, old man, tell me about your troubles. Give me the truth so I clearly understand. Who are you among men? Where are you from? Where are your city and your parents? And what kind of ship did you get here? How did sailors bring you to Ithaca? Who did they claim they were, for I don't think you reached this place on foot?" Resourceful Odysseus then answered him and said, "All right then. I'll tell you the truth of what you've asked me. I wish we too had food and honey wine to last a while, so we could feast in peace inside your hut while others did the work. I could easily go on for 1 whole year and never finish talking of those things my heart has suffered, all those torments I've endured thanks to what the gods have willed. I claim my family comes from spacious Crete. I'm a rich man's child, and in his house many other sons were born and raised, his legal children from his lawful wife. My mother was a purchased concubine. Still, Castor, son of Hylax, the man I claim as my own father, honoured me just as he did his true-born sons. Back then, since he had wealth and land and worthy sons, the Cretans in the country looked on him as if he were a god. But lethal fates took him to Hades' home, and his proud sons divided up his goods by drawing lots. They gave me a really tiny portion and assigned a house, but I won a wife from people who had many rich estates, thanks to my courage. But I was no fool, nor did I act the coward. Now all that strength is gone, a host of troubles wears me down. But by examining the husk, I think, you can assess the plant. Back then, Ares and Athene gave me strength and courage, the power to break ranks of men apart. When I picked the finest troops for ambush, devising perils for my enemies, my proud spirit never gave me any sense that I might die. I always jumped out first, and my spear killed whatever enemy ran off in front of me. That's what I was like when it came to war. But I got no joy from working on the land or household chores like raising lovely children. No, instead I was always fond of ships with oars and wars with polished shields and arrows, deadly things, so horrible to others. I think I loved those things because a god somehow set them in my heart. Different men find their delight in different kinds of work. Before Achaea's son set foot in Troy, I'd led warriors and fast ships 9 times against soldiers from foreign lands and won enormous quantities of loot. I'd pick out what pleased me, and then later get much more when we drew lots. Soon my house grew rich, and Cretans honoured and respected me. But when far-seeing Zeus planned that fatal trip which loosed the knees of many warriors, they asked me and famous Idomeneus to lead their ships to Troy. There was no way one could refuse. The people's voice insisted. So we Achaean sons fought there 9 years and ransacked Priam's city in the 10th. We set out for home, but then some god scattered the Achaeans, and counsellor Zeus devised some difficulties just for me to make me miserable. I stayed at home enjoying my children, the wife I'd married, and my wealth only for a single month. Then my heart urged me to outfit some ships and sail to Egypt with my noble comrades. I manned 9 ships. The fleet was soon prepared. My loyal companions feasted for 6 days. I gave them many beasts to sacrifice, as offerings to the gods and to prepare a banquet for themselves. On the 7th day we left wide Crete. North wind provided us a stiff and welcome breeze, so we sailed on quite easily, as if drifting down a stream. None of my ships was harmed. No one got sick or injured, and we stayed in our seats while wind and helmsman held us on our course. The 5th day we reached Egypt's mighty river, where I moored my curving ships. Then I told my loyal comrades to stay there with the ships, keeping watch on them, while I sent out scouts to find some places we could use as lookouts. But my crew, overcome with arrogance, and trusting their own might, at once began to plunder the Egyptians' finest fields. They took their women and small children too, and killed the men. Shouts soon reached the city, and once they heard the noise, Egyptians came as daylight first appeared. The entire plain filled up with chariots and infantry, all flashing bronze. Zeus, who hurls the lightning, threw a nasty panic in my comrades, so no one dared to stay and face the fight. We were badly threatened from all quarters. They killed many of our men with their sharp bronze and took some alive, so they could force men to do their work for them. Then Zeus himself put an idea in my heart. But still, I wish I'd died and met my fate right there in Egypt, since all sorts of trouble still lay waiting for me. I had once removed the finely crafted helmet from my head and the shield slung round my shoulders. My hand let go my spear. I ran out straight ahead to the chariot of the king, clutched his knee and kissed it. Because he pitied me, he saved my life. He set me in his chariot, and as I wept, he took me to his home. Many of his men, armed with their ash spears, charged at me. Their anger was so great, they were keen to slaughter me. But the king restrained them. He wanted to respect the rage of Zeus, the god of strangers, who is especially irked at wicked deeds. I stayed there 7 years, and gathered up a great deal of wealth from those Egyptians, for they all gave me gifts. When the 8th year came wheeling in, a Phoenician man arrived, a greedy rat who understood deceit. He'd already brought men lots of trouble. Well, he won me over with his cunning and took me with him, until we reached his house and his possessions in Phoenicia. I stayed there with him an entire year. But as the days and months kept passing by, and yearly seasons rolled around once more, he put me on a sea-going ship to Libya, making up a story for me of some scheme that I'd be carrying a cargo with him, whereas in fact, once we were there, he meant to sell me off for an enormous profit. Though I suspected something, I had to go aboard the ship with him. North wind blew a fresh and welcome breeze as we sailed off, a mid-sea course on the windward side of Crete. Then Zeus planned the destruction of his men. When we'd sailed past Crete, we saw land no more, only sky and sea. Then the son of Kronos sent a black cloud above our hollow ship. Underneath, the sea grew dark. All at once Zeus thundered and then hurled a lightning flash down on our ship, which shook from stem to stern and filled with sulphurous smoke as Zeus's bolt came crashing down. All the crew fell overboard and floated on the waves like cormorants by our black ship. The god then took away the day of their return. As for me, though anguish filled my heart, Zeus himself set my hands on the colossal main mast from our black proud ship, so once again I could escape destruction. I hung on and was carried off by dreadful winds for 9 full days. On the 10th dark night, a huge rolling wave threw me up on shore in Thesprotian land, and here the king, Phidon, ruler of the Thesprotians, welcomed me without demanding ransom. When I'd been overcome with weariness and freezing wind, his dear son had met me, helped me stand again and brought me home to his father's palace. He gave me clothes, a tunic and a cloak. There I heard reports about Odysseus, for King Phidon said he'd welcomed him with entertainments as he was returning to his native land. He showed me what Odysseus had gathered, all the bronze and gold and well-worked iron, so many riches stored in Phidon's home, they'd feed 10 generations after him. Odysseus, he said, had gone to Dodona to hear from the massive, towering oak tree sacred to the god what Zeus had willed about his own return to that rich land of Ithaca after being away so long, whether he should do so openly or not. As he poured libations in his house, he swore to me a ship had been hauled down and a crew prepared to take Odysseus to his native land. However, before that, he sent me off, since, as it so happened, a ship with a crew of Thesprotians loaded with corn was bound for Dulichium. He told them to take me there, treating me with all due kindness, and deliver me to King Acastus. But those sailors' hearts were more attracted to a nasty scheme concerning me, so I would be reduced to utter wretchedness. Thus, when the ship had sailed some distance from the land, they tried from that day forward to make me their slave. They ripped away my clothes, cloak and tunic, and dressed me differently, a ragged cloak and filthy tunic ripped to bits, these here, the ones you see before your very eyes. They reached the fields of sunny Ithaca that evening. Inside that well-decked ship they tied me up with tightly twisted rope and went ashore, in a rush to eat a meal beside the sea. But the gods themselves with ease untied my bonds, and so I wrapped my rags around my head and slipped away down a smooth plank, chest first, into the sea. Then with both arms I paddled and swam off. I left the water far away from them and moved inland, where leafy bushes grew, and lay crouching down. They began to shout and wandered here and there, but then they thought there was no point in searching any more, so they went back on board their hollow ship. The gods themselves concealed me easily and led me on my way. They brought me here, to the farmyard of a man who understands. My fate, I think, is to continue living. Then swineherd Eumaeus, you answered him and said, Stranger, you're unlucky. The tale you tell has really touched my heart. All those things you've suffered, all the places where you roamed. But I don't think it's all just as you said, and what you mentioned of Odysseus does not convince me. Given who you are, why must you tell such pointless falsehoods? I know well that in my master's journey home he was totally despised by all the gods. That's why they didn't kill him over there among the Trojans or in his comrades' arms when he was done with war. All Achaeans then would have made him a tomb, and for his son he would have won great fame in days to come. Now the spirits of the storm have snatched him, and there's no glory. And as for me, I live here among the pigs far away from men. I don't go to the city unless I'm called to travel there by wise Penelope, when a message reaches her from somewhere. Then people sit around the man who's come and ask him questions about everything, both those who are grieving for their ruler who's been away so long, and other men who are happy to consume his livelihood without paying anything. I don't like to investigate it or ask questions, not since the day a man from Aetolia deceived me with his story. He'd killed a man, and after travelling around in many lands he reached my home. I gave him a fine welcome. He said he'd seen Odysseus with the Cretans in Idomeneus's home, mending his ships, which had been damaged in some storms. He claimed he'd return by summer or at harvest time, with many treasures and his noble comrades. And so you long-suffering old man, since a spirit led you to me, shouldn't try to cheer me up or secure my favour by telling lies. That's not the reason I show you respect and give you welcome, but because I pity you and fear Zeus, god of strangers." Then resourceful Odysseus answered Eumaeus with these words, "The heart in your chest is really hard to sway. That oath I swore, even that gesture didn't influence you or win you over. But come now, let's make this promise. The gods who hold Olympus will stand as witnesses for both of us in days to come. If your master does get back to his own home, you'll give me some clothing, a cloak and tunic, and then send me off to Dulichium as my heart desires. And if your master doesn't come the way I say he will, then set your men on me and have them throw me off a towering cliff, so some other beggar will be careful to avoid deception." The splendid swineherd then said in reply, "Yes, stranger, what a way for me to gather fame and fortune among men, both now and in the future, to kill you, steal your precious life after bringing you to my own hut and entertaining you. I could later pray to Zeus, Kronos' son, with a sincere heart. Now, it's time to eat. I hope my comrades get here quickly, so we can make a tasty meal here in the hut." As these two were talking like this to each other, the other herdsmen came in with their swine. They shut the sows up in their customary pens so they could sleep. The pigs gave out amazing squeals as they were herded in. Then the trusty swineherd called out to his companions, "Bring a boar in here, the best there is, so I can butcher it for this stranger from another country. We too will get some benefit from it, seeing that we've worked hard for such a long time and gone through troubles for these white-tusked pigs, while others gorge themselves on our hard work without paying anything." Once he'd said this, with his sharp bronze axe he chopped up wood for kindling, while others led in a big fat boar 5 years old, and stood him by the hearth. The swineherd's heart was sound, so he did not forget the gods. So he began by throwing in the fire some bristles from the head of the white-tusked boar, and praying to all the gods that wise Odysseus would come back to his own home. Then he raised his arm, and with a club made out of oak, which he'd left lying beside him, he struck the boar. Life left the beast. Then the others slit its throat, singed its bristles, and quickly carved it up. At first the swineherd offered pieces of the meat from all the limbs set in layers of rich fat. After sprinkling barley meal all over these, he threw them in the fire. They sliced up the rest, put it on spits, cooked it with care, drew it all off, and set heaps of meat on platters. The swineherd, whose heart always concerned itself with what was fair, stood up to carve, and as he served up all the meat, he split it into 7 portions. Saying a prayer, he set one aside for Hermes, Maia's son, and for the nymphs. The rest he gave to each of them, honouring Odysseus with a long cut from the back of the white-tusked boar. That pleased his master's heart. So resourceful Odysseus spoke to him and said, "Eumaeus, may Father Zeus treat you as well as you are treating me with this boar's chine, the very finest cut of meat, even though I'm just a beggar." Then swineherd Eumaeus, you replied by saying, "Eat up, God-guided stranger, and enjoy the kind of food we offer. A god gives some things and holds others back, as his heart prompts, for he can do all things." Eumaeus spoke, and offered to eternal gods the first pieces he had cut. He poured gleaming wine as a libation, passed it over to Odysseus, sacker of cities, then sat to eat his portion. Mesaulius served the bread. He was a man Eumaeus purchased on his own when his master was away. He'd not informed his mistress or old man Laertes. He'd acquired the slave from Taphians using resources of his own. So they stretched out their hands to the generous meal set out in front of them. Once they'd had their fill of food and drink, and their hearts were quite content, Mesaulius took away their food. They'd eaten so much bread and meat they were keen to get some rest. Night came on, bringing storms. There was no moon, and Zeus sent blustery west wind blowing in with rain, a steady downpour all night long. Odysseus spoke to them, trying to test Eumaeus to see if, given all the hospitality he'd shown, he'd take off his cloak and give it to Odysseus, or would urge one of his comrades to give up his. "Eumaeus, and the rest of you, his workmates, hear me now. I wish to tell a story, prompted by this wine which can confuse our wits. Wine can make a man, even though he's wise, sing out loud or giggle softly to himself, or leap up and dance. It can bring out words which were better left unsaid. But still, since I've begun to speak, I'll hide nothing. I wish I were as young, my strength as firm as when we were setting up an ambush and guiding men to it below Troy's walls. Our leaders were Odysseus and Menelaus, son of Atreus, and along with them I was third in command on their orders. When we reached the steep walls of the city, we lay down in thick bushes round the place, swampy reeds crouched down behind our weapons. A nasty night came on. North wind dropped off, and it was freezing cold. Snow fell on us, like frost from high above, bitterly cold. Our shields were caked with ice. Now the others all wore cloaks and tunics and could rest there quite easily, their shields across their shoulders. But when I'd set out, like a fool I'd left my cloak behind with my companions. I didn't think I'd feel the cold without it. So I just brought my shield and shining doublet. Well, when it was the 3rd watch of the night, and the stars had shifted their positions, I spoke to Odysseus, who was close by. When my elbow nudged him, he was all ears, instantly prepared to listen. "Resourceful Odysseus, Laertes' son and child of Zeus, I won't be here for long, not among the living. Instead, this cold will kill me off. I don't have a cloak. Some spirit deluded me, made me come with just a tunic. Now there's no way out." That's what I said. In his heart he had a plan. That's the kind of man he was for scheming or for fighting war. With a quiet whisper he spoke to me. "Keep silent for the moment, in case one of our Achaeans hears you." Then he propped his head up on his elbow and spoke out, saying, Listen to me, friends. As I slept, a dream sent from the gods came to me. We've moved a long way forward, too far from our ships. I wish some man would tell Agamemnon, son of Atreus, shepherd of his people, in the hope he'd tell more men to come out from the fleet." Once he'd said this, Thoas jumped up quickly, Andreamon's son. He threw off his purple cloak and started running to the ships. Well then, I was happy to lie down in his cloak. Then Dawn appeared on her golden throne. I wish I were as young as I was then, and my strength as firm. Then in this farmyard some swineherd would give me a cloak to wear, from kindness and respect for a brave man. But now, with filthy clothing on my skin, I receive no honours. Then swineherd Eumaeus, you answered him and said, "Old man, that story you just told is all right. You've spoken to the point and made your wishes clear. You won't lack clothes or any other thing which a long-suffering suppliant should get from those he meets, for tonight at least. When morning comes, you'll have to dance around in those rags of yours. We don't have many cloaks or other tunics here. We've each got only one. But when Odysseus' dear son arrives, he'll give you clothes himself, a cloak and tunic, and send you where your heart desires to go." After saying this, he jumped up and placed a bed for Odysseus near the fire. On the bed he threw some skins from sheep and goats. Odysseus lay down there. Eumaeus covered him with a huge, thick cloak, which he kept in there as a change of clothing, something to wear whenever a great storm blew. So Odysseus went to sleep there, and the young men slept around him. But Eumaeus had no wish to have his bed inside and sleep so far away from all his boars, so he prepared to go outside. Odysseus was pleased he took so many troubles with his master's goods while he was far away. First, Eumaeus slung his sharp sword from his shoulder and wrapped a really thick cloak all around him to keep out the wind. Then he took a massive fleece from a well-fed goat and grabbed a pointed spear to fight off dogs and men. Then he left the hut, going to lie down and rest where the white-tusked boars slept beneath a hollow rock, sheltered from north wind.